Hello, and welcome to Widow Wisdom and Wealth. In today's episode, you're going to meet my co host, my husband, Jim. Now, Jim might not be on every recording, but he's going to come visit with us every now and then to talk about some of the recordings we've had with our widows and widowers who have moved forward in life, balancing career and raising kids. He himself became, I guess we call it a widower in a way. He was divorced from his first wife, and she's passed away recently. And we together are now raising all of our six kids from age 15 to 24. So he also has some perspective of what it means to maybe put careers on hold to support the family and for the bigger needs. So I am thrilled to introduce him to you today in a little bit of a new format, more conversational, maybe that's the word, with him and I. And he's going to tell you a little bit about how he saw me as a young widow when he wasn't my husband, when he was actually a contractor working in my home many, many years ago. That's how we originally met. And he's going to tell you a little bit about the journey he saw from his point of view. Enjoy. Welcome, everybody, to the next edition of Widow Wisdom and Wealth. And we have a very special guest here today. It is our co-host, my husband, Jim. So many of you who have seen the logo for Widow Wisdom and Wealth see a very handsome little bugger on that picture, and that is Jim. Jim will be joining me on certain of our podcasts to either help, I say, navigate the conversation, spend time with our guest. And many of times we'll have some of our, we call them centers of influence, our estate attorneys, our accountants, people that really help our widowed community with moving on to the next step or with establishing their career while raising their kids. And after some of those podcasts, you and I will sit and discuss them. So you'll be seeing us here on these blue seats much more often. Jim built this set, which is actually the front of my office. Thank you very much. And I always say, and again, this is the second take of this recording because I can't find the first one. The joke to anyone that is out there on the dating scene after divorce or widowhood, for the ladies out there, or even the gentlemen, write down a description. They must be good with power tools. It's really helpful. It is. It looks beautiful. So welcome, Jim, to the podcast. Are you ready again?
I'm ready again.
All right.
Good to be here again.
I'm glad. So what we talked about in the last recording, which we're going to make like it's a fresh one, is Jim met me apparently twice.
Yes.
Once, I don't remember. And then a second time about 2015 when the kids and I had moved from our original house. My late husband Greg and I bought a house right outside the Philadelphia area where Greg and I were both raised. Jim too, he was in Philadelphia. And we bought a house. And about 2 years after Greg had passed, the kids told me they were no longer comfortable there because he had taken his life in the house and they were tired of being that house. So think about how quickly a mom puts a sale sign on the front lawn, or at least my realtor's daughter did very quickly. And we were gone within 2.5 months. And we had bought a house still in the same school district, cute little cul-de-sac, but it was original owners. It was a little 70s, a little 80s.
Need a little love.
Yeah, a little love. How many dead mice did you find in the basement ceiling, Jim?
I stopped counting.
30 or more is the number I had heard. That's the type of care this house had.
Yes.
But Jim was a contractor who was referred to me by a good friend. My best friend from high school happened to be Jim's neighbor. And she said, hey, friend of mine is buying this fixer-upper house. She needs someone to help. She doesn't have a very big budget. And Jim came into my world. So I'll let you take over the story about where you met me the first time, which I think was just a few months into my widowhood.
Yes.
And the person you met in 2015. Let everyone know exactly what it looks like to bump into Donna Jean, recent widow.
Yes.
Go for it.
Well, when we first met, it was literally a few months after your husband passed, and it wasn't memorable.
No, don't
She
remember it
doesn't
at all.
remember even meeting me, but I did come to the house because of a neighbor. Her best friend I was good friends with, and she wanted me to go over there just to make sure no one was taking advantage of her. I was never there to do the work. I was there just to make sure she could what to expect price wise and what they could do, not do, and what would make the house.
You didn't want me taking advantage
Yeah,
of.
just so
I had no experience in contracting.
Sure.
I was trying to take down a half wall between the kitchen and the dining room so I could
Yeah.
see the kids, which was silly because before Greg passed, I was in that house and could cook fine. I wasn't nervous about seeing the kids. But after Greg passed, all of a sudden, I really wanted to keep my eyeballs on them. Sorry. I know, it's been a rough week. So you come in, just making sure that I was all is well.
Yep.
And I went on my merry way with my work and the
Yeah.
whole bit. And then we moved 2 years
2
later
years later.
after I had that kitchen redone. Yeah, the new owner must love it. But I have this bad habit of every time I have a kitchen redone,
Yes.
I move. Yeah, my late husband and I, before he got relocated abroad to Rome, Italy, we had just redone like the kitchen in our starter home, and I was in love with it. And then 3 months later, we moved. I was like,
Mhm.
oh, about the same thing happened, but I did it to myself this time. So we move into this home, and during that time, I was working part-time at the kids' school as a teacher's aide, trying to mimic their schedule because I had gotten that position right before Greg passed because Greg had traveled a lot and held on to the position because one, I was trying to raise an 8-year-old, 11-year-old, and a 12-year-old on my own after Greg passed, and I didn't quite know what to do next. But during the time that you came into our world again as a contractor on this next house, and Jim was doing the work pretty much on nights and weekends
Yeah.
because he was watching his kids full time,
During the day.
raising the kids.
Mhm.
And you'd come over when your wife would come home from work, and then you would come do the work. So it took what, about 2 years?
Yeah, a little bit because we did one project at a time.
Yeah, the budget was really tight.
Yeah.
But I was studying at that point in time to become a financial
Yes.
advisor. I decided that after that 2 year mark, after Greg had passed, that I wanted to go back and find not just a career, but something with more of a calling and a mission. Make some lemonade out of the lemons I was left after Greg passed. And so I really wanted to give financial advice to families in transitions, to widows just like me and widowers. And that was my calling. That's what I wanted to do. So I knew what education I had to get. And so I was studying, working, raising the kids, and Jim's watching me go through all of it. So what did that look like? I'll stop talking.
Well, first of all, you got to say you were lucky enough because you did have a financial advisor.
I did. My financial advisor was the one who told me, okay, you can take X
Yeah.
amount of time to go ahead and study before you have to get back to work
Yeah.
full time. And I was mentoring under that financial advisor
Sure.
to make sure I knew exactly what I had to do, what tests to take. So I knew my budget for the house. I knew my budget for what I could live off of because I did have some life insurance remaining after Greg's passing, after I took care of kids' education and the house. And that's what I knew. I
Yeah.
had about 2 years to start bringing in a decent income.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Well, like I said, and also for your, like, say, calling to want to help widows because you just saw how beneficial it was.
Yeah.
You,
No,
you weren't stuck.
it
It
was
was,
the when I look back after the two
yes,
years,
yeah.
what was the
You've always
most
said that.
what was the most influential part
Mhm.
of that journey? And it was my financial advisor.
Yeah.
He really had helped me just get everything in order. And I was pretty squared away. I had a degree in finance, I had an MBA. I was the person in our relationship with Greg and I who took care of all the finances. But I didn't know the bigger things. I didn't know how to navigate Social
Yeah.
Security. I didn't know how to get the life insurance. I didn't know the life insurance went to the funeral home first before it paid me. I didn't know how to show up at the funeral home to go grab the check. I didn't know any of that stuff.
Mhm.
I didn't know how to navigate federal benefits. I had no clue. And I had a stack of like real bonds, right? I remember handing the financial advisor being like, what do you do with these? He's like, oh my God, who still buys bonds? I was like, apparently my late husband did.
Yeah.
But that financial advisor helped me with all of it. What were the decisions I had to make in the first 3 months? What decisions could I just hold? What money were we going to wait to make decisions with? How do you fund a kid's 529? How do you predict the value of your mortgage? Like he helped me with all of that. So that really was why I was flipping my career on its head to go give that service, that calling for the families just like myself. But all right,
Well, I've
back
always,
to me.
no, but I've always said to you, you didn't, whenever you say like start my career, dude, I've said it a ton of times to you. I said, I don't think that she was starting a career. I just think she was, it was 20 years later than it would have been.
True. True,
You know,
because
you
I
would
had
have,
given up my career to follow
you'd given
Greg
it your
abroad.
career. So it was just restarting. It wasn't like you didn't have anything. You already had the basis. You could have worked that whole time and been very successful in what you were doing. But it gave you that opportunity to go back in. So when I met you, when you bought the new house, when I was working there, it was just trying to take care of kids, trying to do study, um, keep the house in order, and it was just wasn't chaotic, but you're hyper and you were, I just felt like the kids were quiet. And I just saw you shuffling them in and out and drop off pickups and trying to study, have the books out. I always had books on the table and trying to really fit it all in.
Yeah. And
Um,
for many of the times, it would be that I would come home from work. We would take the kids to whatever sporting events, feed them dinner, the whole bit. And then I would come home, put them to bed. And so Jim would still be there working,
mhm.
right? Because those were the hours you
Yeah,
worked. And I would be, pouring just a glass of,
it was a bottle.
no, it wasn't. It was a glass of wine and cracking open my books. So I
Yeah,
was studying from like 9 o'clock at night till
yeah.
midnight or 1 in the morning. So that was, yeah. So tell the listeners about the point where you gave me some advice after watching me for probably, what, about a year?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it was just seeing her balance all that, and the job she had was that she took just to be there for the kids.
Just kind of,
It was at their school, but it also allowed her, it was a little bit of income, but it wasn't a career, it was a job, and it was I just saw her kind of running around, look stretched way too thin, and yeah, I told her to just quit her job.
yep.
As I was working on her bathroom, leaning out into the hallway, just to yell down, just quit already.
Yeah.
So just speed it along.
I remember sitting there in
Yeah,
my robe
yeah,
studying, right? Like at the
mhm,
dining room table where you could see there's steps up to the
yeah,
bathroom. And Jim's like, just quit, just study full time.
yeah.
You'll get to the career quicker.
Quicker.
Then this is going to take you forever. Like
Mhm.
this isn't healthy. You can't keep doing it. And then what happened?
And then I went home, right? Didn't think
Yep.
she was going to take me seriously because why would you? But then I got a text a little bit days, weeks later
Yeah.
saying, I did what you said. I quit my job today. And I literally, I was in disbelief that anyone, first of all, was actually listening to me. More so, they actually did what I suggested.
Yeah.
But yeah, well, at the time it was my wife, not my ex-wife. But she said, "What idiot would listen for any type of career advice from you?" And then I got really nervous. So I'm like, what did I do to this woman and her kids?
They've already gone through widowhood,
Yeah.
and now she just took advice from me.
Ah.
But it was great. So,
And I
yeah,
am someone that does not have a degree in finance,
no,
right?
but you're
Or
very
a
wise,
master's. Right,
very charming.
right. Sure.
So, so let's fast forward. So I actually did. I stepped away from my job. I gave them notice. It was in August, right before September, because it was a job at the school, so they had time to find the replacement.
Mhm.
And I went full-fledged studying for all of my series, my series 7, 66, started studying for the CFP. And by probably May of that next year,
Mhm.
I was licensed and working and mentoring underneath my own financial advisor who gave me a wonderful
Yes.
opportunity to learn the business. And you were all done working at the house, ran out of a budget,
Mhm.
and
Yeah, the first guy at the first house got the budget.
sorry. So sorry. And so we didn't really reconnect for years.
Yeah, years. Yeah,
And then was 2019?
yeah, early
Yeah,
2019.
2019.
Mhm.
So what you guys have to picture is that I'd also, because of this house, had to get new siding and new front door
Roof.
and roof. Yep.
Mhm.
And so I had done while Jim was working on the inside, I had a beige house put up, black shutters, but I put a blue door in the front because, well, it was my favorite color. But Jim thinks I put a blue door because
The original owners had a blue door, and I think that was the end of the decision making on them.
not very creative.
Nope.
And from your experience or your
Yeah.
design desires, what should a house look like?
You have your primary color.
Mhm.
You have your trim color.
Uh-huh.
And then if you have a third color, it should be all the moving parts. Doors, gates, garage doors,
Yeah.
front doors, shutters.
Yeah. So for those
Should be
other,
one color, by the
yes, those moving part colors, I had white in one section, I had black in one section, I had a blue door.
way. Hmm.
So we tell you this story because years later, my dogs had scratched the blue door. I couldn't get the paint color match because of the fading on the door. So I just painted the door black. And I stepped to the curbside, looked at that house, and was like, oh my God, it's beautiful. And I heard Jim tell me years before, why'd you get a blue door? It's not
Hmm.
going to look good. And I looked at that house and it looked amazing.
Hmm.
So I snapped a picture of it. Your phone number had even changed.
Hmm.
I called my best friend. I was like, Jim, do you have Jim's number? I want to send him a picture of the door. It looks amazing. I would say effing amazing. And look. And I sent you the picture, and then we started talking again. By
Yeah.
then, you were divorced,
I was divorced.
about
Yeah.
a year out from your
Mhm.
divorce. And we just kind of picked up where we left off.
Yep.
It was pretty good. So let's fast forward to that point. I'm very different at that point. I was a little heavier. I had a beautiful front door, but also I had about 3 years of experience under my belt, working as a financial advisor. And at that time, I had hired a college girl who was the older sister to one of my kids' friends to be a nanny almost to help my kids get off the bus because I was working, take them to baseball, help them with dinner, and I would meet them at the field. So the stress of my hyper life was still there, but it looked very different.
Sure.
So who or how would you describe the person you met all those years later versus the widow at the table, just trying to fit it all in?
Well, I think it was more you were able to concentrate on not one thing because you still with the kids, but the kids were also 2 years older.
They were older, so
Which
they could be
changes.
left home alone on their
Yes.
own at times if they needed to be.
Yeah, when you hired
Not for
someone,
days, just for hours.
no, but hiring the college girl to help was just help. It wasn't necessary because the kids were getting older,
Yeah.
in the teens, but you got to focus more. But just like anything, she now works crazy hours, and that started then.
It did.
But yeah, we have to tell her to reel it in every once in a while.
Yeah.
Take a day off.
Try it.
Go golf.
My 2025
Mhm.
goal. We'll end the 12-hour days. I promise, booby.
Yeah, but I think you were just full all in. Now you didn't have to worry about. Well, it was the reason why I told you to quit the job.
Yeah.
Why should you be worried about that? That's not a career. That
Yeah.
was a fill-in type thing for your time, and you concentrated on the right things.
Yeah.
And you're at. I always say this: you're at where you're supposed to be.
Yeah.
This is where you should have been. You should have been this. You're just, you took a break for the kids and all that, and then now you're back and you get to do what you want.
And one of the things that happened when Jim and I did start dating, and I started hearing about your divorce and the settlement of it and things like that. And I also realized too, because really a lot of our friends and our relatives were getting divorced around that time, that I was so specialized or wanting my business to be specialized on financial advice for families in transition, meaning just widows at that point,
Good.
that I went back and got my CDFA to become the certified divorce financial analyst because I saw in the people around me and experience, like when Jim was telling me the story of him settling his divorce, I was like, oh my God, like you should have called me. Like I would have helped you with some of those nuances. Like you don't know what you don't know. But if you have a financial advisor in the background or alongside of you saying like, ooh, but there's a tax qualification of that.
Sure.
Or you have an opportunity to take this withdrawal before it rolls over. Those types of things. Or no, just don't settle that. That would be a friend, not an advisor. But if I would have been there, like I was like, I want to be able to help these people too, because I found too that a lot of the people having divorces, for me as a widow, my financial situation was known, right? And we could kind of control it in a way. But for those in divorce, you have someone else that might be moving, an ex-spouse who lost their job or a change in child support or alimony. So it's almost as if the need for guidance continues on. So thank you, because that was one of the reasons I went and got my CDFA, and now I can expand what I do, except in financial, to really encompass all of those families in transition, as well as you and me blending finances when we ultimately got married in 2022. Because that was different, because we come from money from a very different approach.
Well, that sounded. We don't come from money.
No, we come with a money mindset.
Okay.
No,
no one's coming from money.
We were both born and raised in Philadelphia, and
I think my dad watching this would fall off his chair if he heard you say that.
No, we don't.
No.
We do not come from money. We do not. We come from taking SEPTA in Philadelphia and our good old 2 feet that would get us places. But the way we handle money, the roles we had in both of our previous relationships with money, as well as how we think about spending and saving and things like that. I hope we've rubbed off on one another a little bit.
Absolutely.
Okay. So
I'm just here to give out life coaching.
That's it?
Yeah.
Okay. Carpenter and life coaching. You are wise.
I haven't been wrong.
No, you actually are good. It always listeners know this about Jim and me and my marriage. Jim will predict something or say something. He can read a situation very well, very quickly. And I'm like, no, I'm one of these people that, what would you say, an optimist? I have blind faith in people.
You do, yeah.
Yeah, maybe a bit. And so then whatever Jim
I
just
do not.
yeah,
Yeah.
no, he does not.
Yeah.
We came from the other side of the boulevard in Philadelphia. Maybe
Yeah.
that's why.
Yeah.
But I'll also like, about a week or two goes on and then what Jim predicted happens. And I'm always so mad. I'm like, how did you call that? How did you know that? You read people.
I think it's people are predictable.
Hmm.
Yeah. Good and bad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What
Good.
do you always say? Like, why are you shocked?
Yeah.
Why are
Yeah.
you upset?
Yeah. I want someone to shock me. Go the other way.
Yeah.
Come on.
So now you know too much about me and
Yeah.
Jim. So let's reel it back. We'll finish this up.
Mhm.
What we had also done is after we decided to really niche and I say we and niche this financial planning that we do, what we call hang your own shingle. So Jim actually stepped away from his job to help me establish Sefton Financial and for some personal reasons.
Mhm.
But that was a big deep breath for the two of us. And I thank you for having enough faith in that we could make this work. So Jim did most of the admin part of everything that had to do with my firm. And I was face to face with clients and doing the financial part for our families in transition. So I feel like I took a deep breath twice in a 5-year period. Once to relaunch my career or just to get back in there. And then two, to do this with a shingle with you and me being a small business
Sure.
and learning how to run a business on our own. So what advice would you have for people listening of if you're going to switch your career or own your own business or to make that pivotal change when you're in widowhood or divorce? Because many of us, this is the opportunity to do it different.
Yeah.
What would you have to say?
I'm a firm believer, and there's never a right time. If you're waiting for a right time, you're always going to find an excuse not to do it. Um, and you'll make work whatever you need to make work. And I think it's just people are scared to try something new.
Yeah.
But it might be the best decision you ever made. And I always said too, when we talked about doing this and you open up, I'm like, worst case scenario, we do something else.
Yeah,
What are you gonna, I mean,
it's true.
we both had enough people pass young around us and our families and stuff where you just, yeah.
Yeah. And we're both actually very good bartenders. So
Yeah.
we always could lean in on that. So that's a good thing.
That's true. Yeah, there's always something you can do. But no, I always say just it's the time to do it. I mean, most people don't have, like I said, life part two. You don't have that moment where you can switch. And I think that's probably the best opportunity to do it and have something for yourself because you had to always think of a spouse. There's nothing wrong with that. I did it. You did it.
Yeah.
Most people do it. But I feel like when you find out now, if you're on your own again, well, now I can make every decision. You own everything at that point. And
Sure.
do what you want, do what makes you happy, and just roll with it. And if that doesn't work out, do something else. Plenty of stuff.
Yeah, that's a very good point.
Yeah.
And I also try to always encourage anyone that comes to me being like, hey, you flipped your career on its head. How'd you do it? Or what was the best advice? And I really do think the best advice is one, to have a supportive partner in this,
have to.
whether it's a spouse or a best friend or someone, but have someone that say like they're your go-to, they're your lean in of just to bounce ideas off of. Also, go find someone that's doing or has done what you want to do, and talk to that person, see if they would mentor you or see what did their journey look like. Have a coffee, have a lunch, you'll learn a lot. And Jim always says people are so willing to help.
Sure.
You need to let them, you need to ask.
Yeah. I definitely feel that anytime, if you really think about any times in your life, anytime you need help, if you ask anyone, everyone's happy to help. And, some people don't want to ask.
Yeah, they're shy to ask.
Yeah.
Yeah. And there's a wonderful book out there called Who Not How by Dan Sullivan. And I talk about it all the time because I'm a big fan of like, if this isn't your strength, if I don't know how to open up an LLC or an S Corp, talk to someone, say, do you know a small business attorney who can help me? You don't have to do everything. Now, usually when you're starting a business, you do. You're the janitor, you're the marketer, you're the tech person.
Yep.
You should have seen me. I'm still the tech person trying to figure out how to do the Zoom, to get the blue pictures. Ladies and gentlemen, there's a tons of wires behind this screen, but we got it. Yep. Reason why it's recording number 2 for the same topic. But I always say too, like, but when you can afford it, or if you just want to ask, again, people are very generous with their time,
Mhm.
or even sharing their experience. Like, how did you start in media? Did you do Facebook, Instagram, and TikTok? Or no, we just stayed in Facebook because that's where our
Yeah.
ideal client is.
Our owner.
Yeah, just ask and get it done. Like when you were starting as a carpenter, did you know everything the first day you worked off as an apprentice?
Yes. No, I
You
didn't.
asshole.
No, I did not. I still don't.
Really?
You learn as you go.
All right.
Mhm.
But that's one of my little tips.
Yeah.
Bring it back.
And remember too that I always tell you this, no one did it all on their own without help.
True.
No one. I don't care who they are. I don't care how many times you hear self-made. I'm not saying self-made isn't a thing. Self-made's a thing. But when everyone you hear people say, "No one helped me," now I don't care if it was just giving you a phone number for something. I don't care if it was advice. Everyone has had help. Everyone reached out. It's impossible to do anything without help. It's
Yeah.
impossible.
Yeah. Like I even
And
say,
support.
I wouldn't have been able to do any of this if I wouldn't have had that little nest egg of life insurance money.
Mhm.
I would have been, or even the income of Social Security coming in.
Mhm.
That gave me a little bit of a ballast, a little bit of something to lean in on to cover the bills while I was trying to recreate myself. Now I knew it wasn't going to last forever, so I
Sure.
knew I had to get to work. But share with the listeners the story about the vacuum.
Oh, with Bill.
Yeah.
A former employer of
Yeah.
mine when I was young had a carpet cleaning business.
He had a lot of hair. It looked like Elvis, his big pompadour.
Not my boss, I did.
It's true, you did.
Um, but no, he literally worked at Pepsi in a factory. He was in his 20s. On the machine that puts little labels on. He said I would stare at that third shift, and he was looking for just extra money, and he saw an ad for cleaning an office at night, and he could do that in the morning. So he got off very early. He could run in, and he said, but he saw that he needed cleaning supplies and a vacuum, and he asked his mom to borrow her vacuum so he could do the office. And she said yes, and he did that. Then fast forward a little bit, there were some stains in the carpet. They asked him, "Can you get them out?" He rented a machine, didn't even own one. Did that. Then it fast forward to, "Can you do my house?" And now he's got a very successful business. Guy works like crazy. I've always told you that. He's the nicest guy over me. But he always said, he goes, he's the one that taught me that because I was young when I worked for him. And he always said about being self-made and self this. In my mind, he did everything on his own. Because when he was always telling me everyone needs help, I'm like, well, you did all that on your own. He goes, if my mom didn't lend me that vacuum cleaner, I'd still be working at Pepsi putting labels on.
Yeah.
So he taught me, even himself, who I looked at him as someone that no one helped him. And no, he looks at it. He goes, if she would have said no, I would have just went about my day and never took the job. And now he's got a very successful career. But I always remembered that. And that's why I always pass that to you. I always say that. I said, everyone needs help.
Yeah.
Something.
And that's
Anything.
one of my favorite parts of when I work with my clients.
Mhm.
And I have the privilege of working with them many of times from very early on in widowhood to a few years out,
Yeah.
right? To all of a sudden their kids are in college, right? So I get to see the journey evolve a little
Mhm.
bit. And I always say to them, if you have something that you need to ask, right? Like we would love to point you in the right
Sure.
direction, right? All the people that we've experienced through life might be someone that can help you.
Yeah.
You never know who knows what.
Exactly.
So don't ever hesitate to ask.
Agreed.
So, all right. I love doing recording number 2 of the same topic with you, Jim Kean. Thank you. Any words of wisdom you want to share with everyone before we sign out?
I've given out so much wisdom
Yeah.
already today, twice in this. I don't think I have anything left.
All right.
I have nothing left. I want to save stuff for later on.
It's true. You'll be seeing Jim again, you lucky devils. So, thank you all. I appreciate being part of Widow Wisdom and Wealth, and we'll be talking to you soon in our next episode.